Yeah, hello, and then welcome back to History Time with Kafui. So, in History Time with Kafui today, we want to look at the events which led to the formation of the Aborigines Rights Protection Society, and then how the Aborigines Rights Protection Society is of much relevance to us today. So, without wasting much time, we delve quickly into the historical aspects of the whole ARPS. Now, in the year 1897, so from your screen, you can see that in the year 1894, Sir William Maxwell passed or proposed a lands bill, which is also known as the Crown Lands Bill. The main purpose of the bill was to bring large areas of land in the Gold Coast under the British government control. And so the whole idea of the lands bill was to make sure that majority of the areas in the Gold Coast in those days would now come under the control of the British government, since they were the colonial masters of the Gold Coast and then other West African countries as well. Now, the main provisions of the bill are stated as follows. The first one is that it declared that all waste or on unoccupied lands, forest and mineral lands would become crown property. And so they said that any land which is not occupied or any land that they felt was wasted or wasting would now become a property of the British government. And so the minerals land, the forest lands, the forest zones, the minerals, wherever they find any land which is not occupied or used, then they said it is for the British. Only if this bill was passed into a law, the story would have been different. Yes. The second one also says that it gave the colonial government authority to control the granting of land concessions, especially for mining and timber. And so, if you, the indigene of the land, wanted to do engage in any mining activity, you have to go to the British for the land concession. Or if you want to delve into the timber business, you needed to ask permission from the British government for the land concession. Um, Go ahead or right. Then the third one says that it required that land concessions receive the governor's approval, reducing the powers of chiefs and land administration. And so the lands bill made sure that the British government had more power than the indigenes or the chiefs of the indigenes. And so, just look at this. You're in your own country. Somebody comes and says that I'm your colonial master, and then he's taking care of everything, basically everything. Even your own lands, you cannot control them. You cannot give out land to somebody. You cannot sell out land to anyone unless you ask permission from the British government. So just imagine how stressful or tedious it was for our forefathers. But let's look at what happened. The next one says that it enabled the government to collect royalties and revenue from these lands and concessions. And so the British government or the British governor with his people would go to the various lands where mining and timber business were going on, and then they go for royalties and then revenues. Our chiefs were not supposed to have that power, only if this bill was passed, to become a law. Now, why was the bill opposed? So, the bill was opposed by some of the educated elites and then some of the chiefs. And then, why was the bill opposed? So, the first point says that Africans argued that there was no use ownerless or wastelands in the Gold Coast. So, it is very clear that there is nothing like a wasteland or ownerless land in the Gold Coast. And so, for that matter, the bill does not really make sense or does not align with the traditions of the people. Every piece of land belonged to a family, school, or community under customary laws. And so the bill was trying to infringe upon the rights or the laws of the indigenes, and then they were not happy with that. And so they had to oppose this particular bill. The next point says that chiefs and educated elites believe the bill would confiscate ancestral lands and weaken traditional authority. So the bill was just there to take out the ancestral lands and then weaken the traditional authorities, meaning that our elders of families, the chiefs, the traditional leaders do not have any right to own any land or have control over any land anymore. And so that was one of the reasons for the opposition to this particular bill. And then finally, many feared it was intended to make the British Crown the real owner of the indigenous land. So somebody comes from Britain and says that this particular land belongs to me if this bill was passed. But due to the resistance from our ancestors and some of the educated elite, this bill was never passed. Now, what was the outcome of the whole lands bill of 1894? Now, due to the strong opposition from chiefs, lawyers, and educated Africans, the colonial government withdrew the bill. The controversy later contributed to the formation and activities of the Gold Coast Aborigines Rights Protection Society (ARPS), which continued to defend indigenous land rights against later land legislation. And so the ARPS, which was formed in 1897, fought against further lands bill, which were proposed by either the British government or even the local governments of the people. They made sure that everything was in place. Now we come to the real bill for which we are here. That is the ARPS, or the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. Remember, it was formed in the year 1897 after Sir William Bradford Griffiths amended the 1894 Lands Bill. So the 1894 Lands Bill was not passed, but 3 years later, another governor posted to the Gold Coast in the person of Sir William Bradford Griffiths decided to amend or change the bill. And then this was a time that the ARPS was more serious, or they stood up seriously to fight against the bill. It was established by chiefs and educated Africans to protect the rights and interests of the indigenous people. Yeah, so like we discussed some few minutes ago, the ARPS was just there to fight the interests of our people and then our rights as well. Now let's look at some of the key leaders of the ARPS. We have the likes of John Mensah. So from your screen, you can see John Mensah Saba. So John Mensah Saba was born at Anomabo, I think in the year 1864 or 66, one of them, at Anomabo in the central region. And then he even was one of the contributing figures to the changing of the name of Infanchipim. So Infanchipim was not Infanchipim. It was later that it was changed to Infanchipim because of John Mensah Saba. Now, when you go to the University of Ghana at Legon, there is a whole hall which has been named after John Mensah Saba. So you can see these are prominent people who knew what they were doing even in the year 1897. So if somebody should see someone and say that our ancestors did not help in anything, they just sat down for the British to take them as captives or slaves, then the person does not really know what he or she is saying. All right, we have Joseph Ephraim Cassidy Hayford. Yes, so Joseph Ephraim Cassidy Hayford also was born in Cape Coast. It is not here, but he was born in Cape Coast. I don't really remember the year, but I think he should be a bit younger than John Mensah Saba, because I learned Joseph Ephraim Cassidy Hayford was there on the day of independence in 1957. So you can just imagine I think he should be a bit younger as compared to John Mensah Saba. Yeah, so Cassidy Hayford also has a hall in the University of Cape Coast where I did my Bachelor of Education in Mathematics. Yes, there is a hall over there dedicated to sorry, JEC Hayford. So Joseph Ephraim Casley Hayford. When you go to University of Cape Coast, there's a hall called the Casford Hall, which is dedicated to Casley Hayford. Yes. Then we have the likes of George Hughes. From the screen, you can see the pictures over there. We have Jacob Wilson Say, who was, I think, the first vice president. And then we have J.P. Brown, who was the first president of the ARPS. And then we have Dr. James Kwedri Agri. When you are going to Cape Coast after Anomabo, you go for a debate. You see, there's a school over there named after Agri. Before you get to Agri Memorial itself, there's a technical school named after Kwedri Agri. Before you get to Agri Memorial itself. So all these people are prominent figures who were very crucial in the fight for our rights and then the interests of the indigenous people in the year 1897. Now, John Mensah Saba, the lawyer or the spokesman of the ARPS, advised the chiefs to send a delegation to Britain to present their case to the British government. So they went there to Britain, and then by the time they got there, the secretary, I think at that time, was Joseph Chamberlain. He was the secretary of the state of Britain, and so they sent their case to the secretary. He also sent it to the appropriate authorities, and then they look at the bill and they were like, no, this bill cannot be passed into a law. So had it not been the efforts of these um, figures or the ARPS, a lot of things wouldn't have been the way they are in Gold Coast or present day Ghana, like we see today. A lot of the land would have been owned by the British, which I don't think would have been a good thing for us. And then finally, the greatest achievement was protecting customary land rights and laying the foundation for Ghana's nationalist struggle against colonial rule. And so all these people did their bits and pieces, brought everything together to fight for a better Ghana, which we might not really appreciate today. But this is what they did for us. And then we also have to be appreciative of what they did and then build upon what they have done so that when our future generation also come after us, they will also appreciate what we did today. If you don't appreciate what they have done for you in the past, I don't think the next generation will appreciate what you are also doing today. And so, in whatever you are doing, just try and fight for the right things to be done. And then you will surely be remembered like we are remembering our forefathers today. Thank you so much for your time, and then I'll be happy if you can share this bit of history with a friend who needs to know something about the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. Our next historical content will be on the NCBWA, National Congress of British West Africa. It was also one of the earliest movements which also did something. I'm hoping to bring in you that content tomorrow. Do enjoy.